Welcome to today's discussion, and we're going to be talking about sex in the workforce and whether it should be allowed or not allowed. And the reason why I was thinking about this, let me take these off, is because I've been watching Formula One for many years. And last year, the Red Bull Formula One team were the most dominant team in history. They won 23 out of 24 races. Hi, Sally. They won
Hi.
23 out of 24 races. Max Verstappen won 19. He broke all the records in the book. So, as an organization, they absolutely dominated their sport. What's been happening over the last few weeks was a woman in the workforce started sexting, or Christian Horner, who owns the team, or is the team principal, he doesn't own it, he's a team principal, started sexting this woman. And as rumor has it, and these are all rumors, this woman started to date the father of the world champion. So there's this big power struggle now between the team principal and the father of the world champion. And it all came out, and what the media was saying is, oh, Christian Horner, he's married to Jerry Halliwell, who is a Spice Girl. He's acted inappropriately. He should lose his job as a team principal. So we're going to explore whether work and sex should just be kept totally separate apart, or whether it's okay to have sex or have an affair in the workforce. So welcome everybody, and look, Sally, with that laugh over there, you've got to start us off.
So we're talking about if it's appropriate to have sex in the workforce. Is that what you're saying?
To have an affair in the workforce. I mean, if you are dating someone in the workforce, should somebody leave their job so that there's no problems in the workforce?
So I met my husband in the workforce, right? And he was actually my boss. And so after we became an item, then I stayed in the company, but they had to put me in a different department. So I just, because I don't know what the stats are, but if you don't meet at uni, your probability is to meet at work, right? Meet your partner. Well, that's the old way it used to be. It's all got the online dating and stuff now. But back in the 90s, that's how we used to roll. So personally, I'm all for sex in the workforce, but not so much affairs. But I just think if you still act professionally and stay within, your boundaries, like as I said, I got moved to a different department, but still kept going. So yeah, interesting. I guess you got to have fun at work, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you meant to have that kind of fun.
Well, you've seen it all. I mean, you'd see it in the movies all the time on the desk and all that sort of stuff. And it's just like, that's just taking it a bit too far. But I think as adults, you've got to act responsibly. And as I said, back in the old days, like, when we were sort of meeting people, if it wasn't at uni, it was at work. So it's just where you spent most of your time. What are your thoughts, Al?
I'm assuming we're talking about relationships at work. Is that right?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, well, ironically, that's where I met my first husband as well. Well, my husband, I only had the one. I intend to have the one. And as you say, because that's where you meet people who have things in common with, and you spend most of your waking time at work anyway. And I guess with some people, maybe some of your sleeping time, if you sleep at all. Sorry, going on a different tangent. But yeah, so it makes a lot of sense that that's where people meet each other. The problem, of course, becomes when the personal relationship interferes with the working relationship. And that can be for a whole host of reasons. But that's where you get nepotism as well. And that word comes from the word nebu, because when you sort of hire your family, then again, that changes the dynamics and the perception of fairness and the fact that people are being treated for who they are and what they do rather than your relationship to them. So I think it's always about, how do you have that balance? Yes, I'm a Libra. I'm always talking about balance. And so I can see where it might be necessary sometimes for there to be rules about the kind of whether relationships are appropriate or not. But by the same token, too, we're adults and we should be allowed to be adults. It's when it gets in the way of your professionalism that it becomes a problem. And I believe, and I actually don't know how the conversation started in terms of whether there are rules or we need to have rules. And most companies, I believe, do have some kind of rules, and they can be kind of quite restrictive and constraining, or they might be a bit more open and so that's the dog. It might be a bit more, flexible in how this works out. I'll just go on mute because the dog's barking.
All right, so both Sally and Ali met their partners in the workforce. Adrian, Brendan, Peter, did you meet a partner or a girlfriend in the workforce yourself?
No,
Never.
not me. I'm a tradesman. Most of the traders are blokes anyway.
You might be a tradesman, but one of the big porno movie titles is The Woman That Goes for the Tradesman. I mean, did that ever happen to you?
I'm not saying I haven't met someone through a job or something. I'd be lying if I said that. You got me all embarrassed now. But one thing I will bring up is we'll talk about my ex-police mate again, and the things he used to get up to was just unbelievable. You know what I mean? You talk about on the desk, he's talking about in the back of police cars, bonnet of police cars, and like he was terrible. He used to go out. His wife was actually on the catwalk with Megan Gale and Claudia Schiffer, and she was gorgeous. And he's running around playing up like a second-hand whippersnipper. You know, like it's just yeah. Anyway,
so the question, Peter. And it reminds me of somebody that I once knew who was a female, and in order to get out of a fine, she performed. So your mate, was this with another female copper, or was it all
mainly with more colleagues? Yes, with more of his colleagues, because
yeah.
he used to work night shift, and that's what his words were. It's the biggest incestuous family going around. And they were all doing it. And the divorce rates between police are quite high for that reason. They run off with the younger girl. He did. He ended up with a younger 14-year-old, 14 years younger than him. And it's just cost him $800,000 to get rid of her. And I've got to go to his wedding rehearsal Saturday. And he's getting married the following Saturday to another one, but not another policeman. But he's backing up for the third one. And I just shook my head. But anyway,
I know that at one stage I used to film weddings, or I used to be the soundman for a cameraman. And one of the weddings we did was a police wedding, and so it was a female copper marrying a male copper. And what ended up happening was the police were so drunk. You've never seen a bunch of people get so drunk. By the end of the night, the woman copper wanted to divorce her husband already. That's how badly behaved they were. Right? So all right. Brendan, what's your view on this?
Look,
now, just before you go, he's from Ireland, so Ireland might have a totally different viewpoint.
right. This is probably the least controversial topic we've ever spoken about in many ways. I think, Sally summarized it right first. So what's the big deal? Hey, what's the big deal? There are boundaries, but there are boundaries outside of work. There are boundaries, in every sense, whether something is appropriate, whether something is harassment or, criminal. I have my first long-term girlfriend going way back to my 20s. I met at work, went out with her for 5 years. I probably reversed things a little bit. When I got married 25 years ago, I went to work for my wife. So I worked for her for a few years until she kind of moved out of the business to do something else. Look, human beings are human beings. We're going to have sex from the earliest possible age to the latest possible age with every possible receptacle that is socially acceptable. The workplace is no different. But There should be, like everything else in human existence, there should be judgment and there should be reasonable consideration of the circumstances.
So I hear what you're saying, but one of the things is, what's the big deal? There's no problem so long as they remain cordial. But when you are involved with another person, your emotions get involved, and it's when the emotions get involved that's when shit can hit the fan, especially in the workforce. And that's what's happened with the Red Bull Racing Bull Formula One team. One woman's turned around and said he was sexting me, and yeah.
Look, can I comment on that, Paul? And yes, I do have a view on that. It's fuck all business to anybody except the parties involved. This is not a school, it's not a university, it's not a public company. It's a business where you have a private owner doing something probably inappropriate to a grown-up woman who's telling him to piss off. He's married, he has to account to his wife. It is of no business to the online Twitterati as far as I'm concerned.
I hear what you're saying and I agree with you, but unfortunately, the reality is he had a trial by media. Everyone was saying he's got to quit. Everyone thought he was going to lose his position. So,
Yeah, well,
in an ideal
everyone can
world,
take
yes.
yeah.
In an ideal world, yes. It's nobody else's business. In the real world that we live in the woke world that we're living in right now, and the other thing that's happened to me personally is when I first started in financial planning, one of the ways I promoted the business is we used to hire two gorgeous young girls who would hand out pamphlets to people to fill in, and then we'll ring up if they were interested in our services. And on one occasion, one of these girls came, and she was a good-looking girl, and she just did not want to work. And I've gone up to her and said, look, this is what you've been paid to do. Just hand out your pamphlets like you paid to do. And she was so bad. What ended up happening was she actually complained to me, and she said I was sexually aggressive towards her or something like that. And that was just a way for her to turn up, be a lazy old slob, and I suppose a lazy slob, and not perform and get paid. So there is that there as well. Adrian, I haven't heard from you.
That's because I'm carefully censoring what I'm going to say. I've worked, I've spent most of my life actually working with the quote, don't get your meat where you get your bread. And that's really held me in good stead. Also working for a NASDAQ listed company where they told us, don't do anything that you do not want to read about in the newspaper the next day. As much as I would love to have a picture of me with my shirt off on the front page of a newspaper, that is also good advice that I have lived with and lived by in different other companies. I've worked for a company in Sydney where their US office in California had a huge problem with girls entrapping men in their company, and the company was having to go to court and settle with them, and it was costing them millions of dollars. And the trickle down was that the Australian office, they had other offices in other countries as well as the US and Australia, but telling everyone to be careful. And it was really frowned upon, those in-office romances, because of what could happen. And, that was also a good thing because it stopped bullying and sexual connotations and bullying as well. But I think if you go back to the original quote with, there's certain things you should keep out of the workforce or the office, because if the gentleman involved has any concern about what he's going to look like in the newspaper the next day, then I think most men do control themselves. It's an outlier where there's a romance that leads to sex and a relationship in a workplace, because most people have a bigger picture they're trying to achieve with their career, and they don't want to become a statistic or tabloid news.
Yeah, look, that's interesting, because if we have a look at 2 US presidents that have had some
Are we
dubious
looking?
affairs, we're talking
But
about
are we
Clinton,
looking at
remember the cigar?
we shouldn't look at presidents, because they are a minority of humanity. Look at what is general practice in the working population of the world, that it's very frowned upon in most companies if it's inappropriate or going to lead to something inappropriate. There are plenty of companies run by husbands and wives, or people that are having a relationship. They are the owners of the company. There's lots of family businesses where it's, fathers, mothers, daughters, and sons, and uncles. So I think what you're really aiming for is where, look at what happened in Canberra with civil servants and ministers of parliament, what a shit show that turned into, and how many people it dragged down with them. Is really, you have to question, you either have to really do it carefully so that there's no fallout from it, or it has to be done properly. I can say, it depends on how much self-respect you have too. I've been on company projects with a female colleague and had to share, like we had to get a hotel room because we had to stay the night to finish that project, and 2 separate beds, and I kept my pants to myself. I often wonder whether I was a nerd for not taking it further, because I could have, but I take more pride in the fact that she was able to walk away from that situation, and my popularity in the company as being someone you could trust was tenfold any satisfaction I got from that situation.
Yeah, but the problem is all the girls thought that you were a nerd, and probably didn't want to go away with you.
Well, yeah, you see what it was actually in China too. So, you look at America and Australia, there are different cultures to obviously other countries and how they look at it, where there's probably some really bad examples in developing countries where the motive is all wrong, and it's not honest or honorable intentions.
All right. So let's have a look at an affair versus a relationship. So, you mentioned husbands and wives, they're actually in a relationship. But what about the married man or the married woman that's decided to use their position of authority to perhaps encourage a younger person into the boudoir? Sally, what do you think about that?
So I've got first-hand experience of that as well. So the CEO of the company, which was a big company, he started stalking me and following me, became infatuated, to the point, because this was a big bank, they had to put me up in a hotel to take it away from him. But because he was the big
Jesus.
boss, no one supported me. And to the end, I went to lawyers, but I thought it was just going to be me in the mud. Even though I did nothing, I was working with his wife trying to sort out this situation. And it was appalling. And I mean, this was back in the 90s. And so I chose to leave because my options would just be my name would be mud, even though I'd done nothing wrong. It was all him. But all the leaders from all the other banks around the world were ringing up concerned that something would happen and would get in the papers. And so they were creating me as the monster. I got out of there and I thought, it's changed a lot now, because look at all what's going down in Canberra and all those sort of places with the stuff. But back then, the position of power, it all started because one day I was his PA and he is the CEO, and he said, I need to get the phone numbers and addresses of my top people in case there's an emergency or I need to get hold of them. And he said, because you're my PA, I need yours as well. And after that, the trouble started, phone calls, and then even videoing at night time. You could see the little red light when I'm at home on my own, and all this sort of stuff. It was terrible, and it was a complete abuse of power. And, you know, when I'm stuck up at the Windsor, couldn't go home. It was appalling. So in the end, I left. And the very first day I started at my other job, I moved to NAB, I think, and I got off the tram and he's there behind me. So he was still stalking me. And then the lawyers in the end returned everything that I'd sent them, all the letters, all the cards, everything, because they said, oh, there was a conflict of interest because I actually represented him in other stuff. And I just thought, as I was only like 24, and I thought, this is appalling. Like, dreadful. And it was a complete abuse of power. Like, he was in his 40s and whatever. So I just got firsthand of just choosing to walk away, because back then, I think it's changed a lot now, women can have a voice, and you only have to, like, and it's almost gone the extreme way with women. Like, you know, I don't know, there's a lot of women, as well as the ones that are actually victims, that carry on or you know, push it too far sometimes as well. So it's a fine line. But I think back prior to the 2000s, you know, 90s and all that sort of stuff, it was pretty shit.
Well, has the
But
world
in a
gone
way,
to...
sorry, Paul, I guess my observation here is that in a way, almost naturally, this conversation moves away from sex in the workplace or related to work or whatever it happens to be, into, if you have an inappropriate situation, whatever it happens to be, an older man, a younger woman, an older woman, a younger man, woman on woman, man on dog, whatever the hell you actually want to put it, it's always going to be he said, she said. And that's a problem, because it's really hard to get to the truth. And, you know, on balance, I think most people accept that most women are telling the truth in most situations, but the ones who don't affect the ones who do. And men will tell the truth and not be believed. So it is just a legal and human nightmare when you get into this quagmire. And you can't say just avoid it, because we're human. And we will continue to actually either deliberately or accidentally get into the murk. But the reality is, technology changes things, society has moved on, but we're still dealing with the same concepts, the same problems, just in a slightly different framework.
Well, has the world become too woke where you really got to watch what you actually say now?
But yes is right. And pardon me for just quickly answering that. Yes, but it's the classic thing. If I was given one bullet and sent back in history, would I murder Hitler? And in retrospect, I would. So the balance is always, is it better to be too woke to save 1 million women from being raped? Or is it worse so that people are afraid to open their mouth? And I ask that as a question. I do not make a statement.
That's an interesting question. Alison, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, and I actually don't like the word woke. I think it has its own baggage that comes with it, and it almost, you use the word woke, and I think you lose what's being said in the discussion. So I don't like the word at all. I think it's overused. I think it's used for the wrong purposes, and I just think it's a bad word. But I do believe that, you know, sometimes it's a bit like, you know, having like, you know, our legal system is based on, it's much better to have one guilty person go free than to hang, you know, so better to have 10 guilty people go free than to hang one innocent man, kind of thing. So I think it's sort of that kind of balance. It's really about the society that we are and the society we want, and what we're willing to put in place to protect that. And I agree, if you've got to call out someone like a Hitler for being, you know, as we all know that he was, then so be it. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in trying to protect someone's good name, etc., that we forget about the innocent ones. And I do think it's about the balance, that sometimes you need to you need to sort of put things in balance before you decide which way to go, one way or the other.
Yeah, well, while you're talking, it reminded, this wasn't in the workplace, but when I was doing the clubbing scene with some of my friends, I had this, suddenly you're laughing, I had this friend of mine who was dating this girl who did not like me at all because, well, I was going out and having a good time and I had a bit of game. And this girl was not particularly attractive. She was, she just wasn't my type at all in any way. And next minute, she's gone to his boyfriend, my friend, and said, he's looking at my boobs. And I go, you don't even have nice. I'm thinking in my mind, you don't even have nice boobs,
Oops.
right?
Oops.
It's like you're
Cardinal
just not
sin.
my
Look
type at all, right? But she was using her. I'm a woman, and all men are like this, and does that happen in the workforce? Go on, Peter.
Like I said, I would be lying if I haven't had met someone through working at their house. You know, you just look around and just go, wow, like she's she shouldn't be doing that. And yeah, one thing led to another, and obviously, yeah, like if they just bend over right in front of you and just go like, okay, yeah, what are you meant to say about something like that? Like, yeah, nice ass, baby, not bad, you know. But
the thing is,
yeah,
you can't
it
say that
happens.
nowadays, even though she's deliberately dropped the pen.
Oh well, they also lean right down in front of you, and like you just
Show you the boobs.
it's human nature. People do that. If she's attracted to me and she, oh well, look, okay, well, one thing leads to another. Well, if grown people can do what they want to do, really, what people do in their bedrooms is their own business. And you know, we're talking about this woke thing and all that sort of like. I'm with you. I'm over the woke word. I got no problem with people want to do whatever they want to do. That's their adults. What really gets me with this woke thing, and it's another topic altogether, I know, but I'm going to say it, is it's the bullshit they're pushing on our kids. It can't, like prepubescent kids don't know, like, oh, maybe you mightn't be a boy, you might be a little girl. All that bullshit is really, really wrong and on so many levels. I'll just leave it at that. I know it's not on topic, but I just have to say that because it's ridiculous what's going on around the world. And my sister actually works for the Queensland government education department, and she writes the protocols and that. And it's just what's been getting talked to our kids is not right. It's not wrong, not morally wrong, right at all. It's wrong on a lot of levels. I'll just leave it at that.
Having two young kids, I know what you're talking about, Peter. And someone was saying to me yesterday or the day before that the school that their children went to had to come up with $27,000 so that everybody can get a trophy. So that nobody gets left out. And where's the, where's the desire to go out and actually achieve something if it's given to you, kind of thing? So I suppose we better leave it there. I was going to go into the whole transgender thing, especially in sports. You know, when a man says he's a woman so that he can participate in sports, and yeah, Sally, I agree with you. She's going no way. But the stories of how men in MMA boxing come up against a woman and kill them, they absolutely cream them. What's your view on that? Should that not be allowed?
Of course not.
Sally. So why are they doing it then?
Over to you, Brendan. But like men and women are different, muscles.
Yeah.
And it's just basic genetics, physical size, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, I even have opinions about women playing football, not because it's a male sport, but it's because of the style of the sport with their bodies. It's just not designed for that. So I don't know. Over to you, Brendan. You were going to say something.
Look, you have to have common sense here, and I'm glad that I think the word woke is probably going out of fashion now because no one ever defines it. It means whatever the hell you want it to mean at a given time. Yeah, it has to come back to balance. It has to come back to judgment and common sense. So no, you should never put the best woman in the world into an MMA cage with an even average MMA fighter because of the physiological differences. But if you're talking chess or darts or poker, that's different. You know, that's, you gotta have some common sense in the whole bloody thing.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. I agree with you. I just want to get to Alison. She wrote in the chat, so bloody stupid. My son stopped trying at school for that reason. What reason was that your son stopped trying at school, Alison?
So we're talking about, every kid getting an award. And Tristan, when he started school, was much ahead of the other kids in terms of, his skills, his reading, writing, what have you. But because he saw these other kids just get awards for no reason, I think, he sort of thought, well, what's the point of trying to do my best if, everybody's getting an award? Not that he was motivated by awards, because that wasn't something that we did at home, that extrinsic stuff rather than the intrinsic stuff. But anyway, it just made a whole difference into his school experience. I must actually talk to him about that if he does remember. But yeah, I just think it kind of brings it all down. It makes everybody mediocre. So the ones who really deserve it for either effort or for ability, they get lost behind. And I think if you do have, there should be, I believe, an award for effort, because not everybody's necessarily brilliant or has had the same sort of advantages to, bring their intellectual whatever skills to the fore, as well as there should be something for ability. And therefore, you are able to catch both sort of ends of the spectrum. They're not actually ends of the spectrum, both types of, efforts. And people in the middle can decide if they want to make an effort, if they're not particularly smart, let me work hard. And I know when I was at school that a lot of the girls in year 7 who were just kind of plodders, they weren't particularly smart, because they worked really hard. In year 12, they got much higher marks than I did, because I didn't have to, work as hard, and so I was a slacker. And so their effort actually paid off, and my lack of effort paid off, because whatever brain power I was born with, I didn't use to my full ability, and it showed, and that's fair. You can't actually blame them for, I can't sort of hold it against them that they got a better mark than me when they worked harder. So I think that effort and ability thing really needs to be, has its own reward and should be rewarded in its own way, separately.
I saw something yesterday on that point. I think it's really relevant, Alison. Yuval Noah Harari, the guy who wrote *Sapiens* and various other books, the Israeli historian, philosopher, author guy. Very interesting bloke, but he's just published a book aimed at 10 to 12-year-olds called "The World is Not Fair." And that's exactly the lesson that needs to get along. I was very good at certain things. I was a scrawny little kid in primary school, so I was shit at football. And I worked really, really hard and became average by the time I was an adult. But you had other kids who were shit at other things, and they worked really, really hard and they became good at it. Hard work is more important than pure talent. And that should be recognized.
I think I like and I come to you, Adrian, but that's absolutely true. I'll take a hard worker over somebody who's got talent every day. And I've actually got two kids, 10 and 11 years old, two boys. One is very talented academically, and he thinks he's so smart. He tells the teachers that they're wrong. He's a bit arrogant about it. The problem is he's really lazy. He won't do any work. Whereas my younger son, he puts his head down and he works really, really, really hard. So at the school that my kids go to, they do have an academic award. And yes, my older son gets it every single time. But Andreas has got the achievement award because he's trying really hard to achieve. So putting your head down and putting your bum up, there's definitely more merit in that than pure talent. Adrian, what do you have to say?
I'm only going to say, because I noticed this at my son's high school, is that they put a lot of, in the marking, stress on effort rather than excellence, because ultimately effort requires a certain attitude by the student that's more consistent and progressive, than excellence might be very few and far between during the year. So, and you can vouch for that. They have think, Alison and Paul, you would both notice on your school report cards for your kids, they do show that differentiation between effort and excellence, and that's progress, and that's not wokeness. Well, I think what we need to be scared of is a study. I'm trying to think where it is, where if you give the same marks to everybody in a subject, the smart ones become dumber and the dumb ones become lazier. And it's the same with the studies into universal basic income as well. If you pay everyone the same, the high performers just lose interest and can actually do damage because they are so far ahead in intelligence. They can finish things faster. They've got time to muck around and be detrimental to the rest of the population, which actually applies to the 1%.
It sounds like my son's at that 1% because he's so.
But that is a specific case, and it's probably he's too smart for that class.
He does. One of the things that the teachers did say, one of the teachers was, when you did a test, you got an hour for a test. He'll do it in 20 minutes, even though he gets half of it wrong, just to say, look how fast I am, kind of thing. I think I want to finish with what Alison has said in the chat there. He says, either extreme of anything can be harmful. Both should be, rewarded. So I agree with you with that. So thank you guys for your time today, and come back next week when we'll find another juicy topic to talk about. Take care.